In today's video, I'm going to be returning to the Guitar Hero franchise and attempting to unlock an achievement that I put off for far too long. Released in 2009, Guitar Hero Metallica was the second installment in the series to focus on the career and songs of one band, after Aerosmith the previous year. The game is based on Guitar Hero World Tour and includes many of the same features, most notably support for not only guitar play, but also bass, drums and vocals, as well as the ability to take on career mode both solo and as a band. So it probably won't come as a surprise to hear their achievements tied to all that stuff. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to be unlocking those related to the guitar career. When I first played this game back in 2019, so already a solid 10 years after it being released, and over the next year or two managed to acquire a decent chunk of the gamer score, now just mostly missing band and online achievements. There was one guitar-based achievement that eluded me, and it's really the reason for making this video. Finally deciding it's time to get it done another 5 years on, but I'll get to that one a bit later on. Rather than just dedicate the entire video to that challenge, I thought this would be a good opportunity to start fresh and show you every achievement that can be unlocked by one man and the guitar instrument in Guitar Hero Metallica. The first step was to tackle the career, and I'm not sure that anyone particularly cares about the story in Guitar Hero games, or even knows that there is a story to be honest, but in this game it's told through cutscenes as you swap between playing as both Metallica and an up and coming band who are trying to prove their worth and eventually join them on tour. The only difficulty achievement for completing a career involves playing on Expert, so of course that's the one I chose before being thrown straight into the first set. And I was off to a good start as I full comboed For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is admittedly an easy song, unlocking achievements for completing a song on Hard or Expert and performing as the guitarist. I'd also like to take this moment to apologise for triggering anyone's OCD, as I didn't notice my camera was clipping over the achievement pop-up, and I did eventually realise this, but not until much later. And up next was the Encore, and after finishing up the Unforgiven, I was into the main set list. And this is the point in the story that the player forms their band, so I was able to create my own custom rocker and band logo, unlocking achievements for doing both. The progression in Guitar Hero Metallica differs a bit from previous games, in that instead of being required to finish a certain amount of songs in each set, you have to earn X number of stars to move on to the next one instead. On the Xbox 360 version, there are a total of 49 tracks in the career, 28 Metallica songs, and 21 by bands that played with or influenced Metallica in some way. It seems like that number does vary slightly depending on which console you're playing on. 49 songs means the maximum amount of stars you can get is 245, but strangely enough, only 72 are required to unlock the 8th and final venue, the Ice Cave, which itself only has one song in to finish up the career. However, I would need to do a bit more than that because there's an achievement for obtaining 100 stars in a single career, so that was the target. And with that in mind, I generally pick songs that I knew to be shorter and or easier to get the 100 as smoothly as possible and avoid replaying anything. But there were a few songs with specific achievements tied to them, so therefore obviously I had to play those. And none of them to be found in the second tier of songs though, which is comprised of guest artists, and I played through Mother of Mercy and Albatross, getting another FC in the latter. Not that there are any achievements tied to 100%ing anything, but it's always nice to see gold stars in the set list. After that, I unlocked the next selection of Metallica songs, and there were two that I needed to play. Firstly, Enter Sandman, which has a song-specific achievement for obtaining a score of 330,000 or more, and I believe this one can actually be done on either Hard or Expert, and if you're going the hard route, you'll need to full combo the song with the perfect star power path, as according to Score Hero, the absolute max you can get is around 334,000. But it's not a particularly tricky one to take down on Expert. The song itself is straightforward, probably also helped by the fact nearly everyone on the planet knows it, so it has a natural feel for the rhythm, and it's only the solo that's realistically going to trip up anyone who can confidently play Expert, and even the solo itself isn't that bad, although I did still mess it up a few times. And having just mentioned the rhythm, for some reason I became incapable of holding it towards the end, but despite that, I still easily cleared the required score by 20,000 points, unlocking the Enter Sandman achievement with 99% of notes hit. And other than spending some time in practice mode, if anyone's struggling with this, I'd recommend checking out some videos of the full song to make sure you're using star power at optimal times. But with that behind me, I now need to play the very next track in the set list, and it's a song that I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce, but I think it's Orion. Either way, let me know if I'm wrong, and there's an achievement available for hitting all 17 star power phrases throughout, and even though it can be unlocked on any difficulty, I stuck with Expert. The most difficult part of this is the fact the song is about 8 minutes long, so definitely has potential to be extremely frustrating if you mess up towards the end. But thankfully, this was another that I took down on the first attempt. And from here, I was back to choosing whichever songs I wanted, playing through those that I knew were short, like Queen's Stone Cold Crazy, those that I knew I'd breeze through, like Toxicity, actually managing another set of gold stars on that one despite an overstrum, and then songs that I just love, so played despite being on the longer side, like the legendary Fade to Black. I remember watching videos online of this song when the game was released, wishing I owned it just to play this outro solo. It's well documented that Metallica spent a lot of time in the studio playing each song whilst wearing motion capture suits, and that was particularly noticeable in the next couple that I played. Firstly, sad but true, shout out to this one's camera shaking animations to really emphasise how heavy the riff is, and then Master of Puppets. And what more can be said about this song at this point, other than I decided against attempting to play this with all Downstrum's Hetfield style, although that probably would make a good achievement. And continuing with the theme of long songs, at this point I'd unlocked All Nightmare Long in the setlist, and anyone who watched my Guitar Hero 3 video is probably aware of the trauma this one caused me, so I wasn't quite mentally prepared to take it on again just yet. But don't worry, I will be coming back to it. My next achievement came after playing through Ace of Spades for completing a song in every in the round venue. I had to look up what that means, but apparently it's a venue where the crowd surrounds the stage on all sides. You learn something new every day, as they say. And after that, it only took a few more songs to unlock the 8th and final set of the career, the Ice Cave, which itself only contains a thing that should not be. But finishing that pops the achievement for completing the career, and I wasn't quite ready for that yet, as I was still working towards the 100 stars, currently sitting at 75. So back to the top of the setlist I went, and after playing a couple of easier songs in Nothing Else Matters and King Nothing, I decided that I had to push the boat out a bit and up the difficulty. Plus, I couldn't do a Guitar Hero Metallica playthrough and not play one. Known for having a solo that's up there the most difficult in the series, at least a full combo anyway, the song's easy enough to pass, especially if you save star power for the solo, and I pretended to know what I'm doing by attempting to tap my way through it. The majority of the points in this one come from the Darkness riff, so anyone comfortable with alternate strumming should fly past the 5-star score cut off. And finishing up the solo and some more chugging riffs left me with just 5 more stars before I could return to the Ice Cave. As I said a minute ago, I'm sure anyone familiar with this channel and my previous Guitar Hero adventures knows the struggles that I had with All Nightmare Long when going for the now that's impressive achievement in Guitar Hero 3. Luckily this time around, all I needed to do was get the 5 stars. And despite not playing this song for near enough 2 years, it would have been a bit of a travesty to not manage that after all the previous grinding, even when factoring in the different charts between the two games. All in all, this was a much more enjoyable experience than last time when I spent about 12 hours playing it and not just the 7 minutes. And now, I could finally finish up the career achievement by completing the final song, The Thing That Should Not Be. I don't think I'd actually ever heard this until I first played the game, but it's based on the Cthulhu stories by H.P. Lovecraft, and that definitely fits well with the design of the Ice Cave venue. Difficulty wise though, it is a bit of an anticlimax when compared to some of the songs I'd already played, and even more so if you factor in some that I'd ignored up this point, like Battery and Fight Fire with Fire, or those that weren't even in this game like Trapped Under Ice. And speaking of, that's the name of the first of 4 achievements I unlocked once done. That one for completing a song at the Ice Cave venue, and next were Metallica and Kirk Hammett for completing the career on Expert and the career as a guitarist, and finally, and Justice for All for earning 100 stars. Even though I now had the Expert career achievement unlocked, I wasn't quite finished with this game mode, as there were still some things to do before I could move on to what is definitely the hardest achievement I'll cover in this video, and to be honest, the entire reason for making it. So I made a start at mopping up the remaining gamer score from the career. And first of all, I needed to perform as 2 of the guest artists, and these are unlocked after playing their relevant songs, one being King Diamond, unlocked after passing the song Evil by Merciful Fate, and the other is Lemmy, who I'd already unlocked by playing Ace of Spades earlier. As a side note, both of them actually provided motion capture for their characters as well as re-recordings of their tracks, which is pretty cool. And each can then be chosen to play any non-Metallica songs. If you choose one by Metallica, then the game just defaults to the band's lineup and you won't get the achievement. After that, I had to complete songs at remaining venues, and these are semi-hidden and they don't appear initially in the main set list, but can be chosen if you select the song that you've already played. And firstly, I did a song at the Stone venue, which is only unlocked after beating The Thing That Should Not Be, and has its own achievement. And then I played through another couple of the shorter songs, one at the recording studio and one backstage. And finishing those up unlocked the Wherever I May Roam achievement for performing at every venue. The game also includes pop-up video style trivia called Metallifacts for each of the band's songs, and watching one of those unlocks some more gamer score. Unfortunately, you have to sit through the whole thing and can't simply quit out, but at least it's a good opportunity to put your feet up and take a break. And all of that had set me up nicely for my next achievement, as I was only a small amount of cash away from earning a total of $15,000. In fact, I could do it with just one more expert performance. And I think that leads me well onto what is definitely the hardest achievement I'll be going for in this video, and potentially the most difficult in the whole game, but I can't really comment on the ones involving other instruments. There's a song in the setlist I haven't mentioned up to this point, but it's without a doubt one of Metallica's greatest, and fittingly has a self-titled achievement that is extremely difficult. That song is Creeping Death, and just like Enter Sandman earlier, there's an achievement tied to it for reaching a certain score as the guitarist. The Creeping Death achievement, however, is dialed all the way to 10 on the difficulty scale, at least for the majority of Guitar Hero players. Whilst you have a lot of wiggle room on Enter Sandman, being able to get the required score on either hard or expert, the latter even with a fair amount of missed notes, Creeping Death can only be done on expert, and there's an extremely small margin for error. But whilst it's definitely more of a challenge than Enter Sandman, the song itself is not the most difficult chart in the world to get a hang of. The main riff will likely be awkward at first, but becomes easy enough with practice, and there's nothing groundbreaking about the solo. It's just the pressure of knowing even just a few missed sections ends any hope of getting the 575,000 score target. You pretty much can't miss other than in the solo, and also need to be smart about star power usage. In fact, I believe the maximum score you can possibly get is around 628,000, and then throw in the fact it's nearly 7 minutes long, and you could probably get an idea of what makes this one tough. I tried over and over to get this back when I first played the game, and my best was just 3,000 or so points off with a score of 572,000. I could never quite get there. But despite not playing Guitar Hero all that much these days, I've been feeling like when I do pick it up, I'm almost better than I've ever been, so I was hoping this wouldn't be too much of a struggle for me. And I thought it'd be a very fitting song to play to finish up everything in the career for this video. So I jumped into it, and right off the bat I was feeling pretty good. In fact, I didn't miss a note until a few minutes in when my fingers got tied up during the solo. But even with that said, I was still hitting the majority of the notes, and most importantly, I was picking up all of the star power phrases. And to be honest, after the solo I started to feel some mixed emotions and had a lot going through my head. I was thinking to myself, am I seriously going to do this on the first attempt after putting it off for 5 years? That is a bit of an anticlimax. And also part of me was also wishing I was logged onto my main Xbox profile, because that's where I really want the achievement. But after the iconic bridge and chanting section, the song ends with a bit of an outro solo, and this is where I did mess up. Not only breaking my streak, which isn't the end of the world, but I also activated star power too early, missing out on the final phrase which I'd forgotten all about. I actually think that would have been enough to scrape past the 575k, instead I fell just short at 569, but I'd be lying if I said a part of me wasn't too upset that I'd have to give it another go. And hopefully these stats give you a good idea of how difficult it is. I hit all but 20 of the 1856 notes, only missing in the solo and the outro, and it still wasn't enough. On the plus side, I also unlocked achievements for recovering from a poor performance, doing so by just putting the rock meter in red at the start of the song, and also earning a total of $15,000 in the career. And before I get back to Creeping Death, there were just a couple of quick and easy achievements to get out of the way. Firstly for creating a custom instrument, and then a custom tattoo. So now I just had one achievement left to get in this video, and I switched over to my Xbox profile and went straight back into it. Strategy wise, I was feeling good. I had the main riff and therefore verse completely nailed. Honestly, if I'd missed at any point up to the solo, I would have just restarted because it didn't seem worth it. And I was also confident about timings for using star power. The solo was definitely my ropiest section, and maybe it would have been worth spending a bit of time and practice just on that, but I felt I could, somewhat inconsistently, hit enough of it to get the job done. So my genius plan was just to play the song over and over until I managed just that. The next couple of attempts pretty much followed all of the above to the T. In fact, I actually missed at exactly the same point in the first 3 playthroughs of the song, at a note streak of 850 during these descending patterns in the second phrase of the solo. My first run then included a mega brain fart as I glanced over at my recording software. As you can see, that didn't go well. I'm not sure if that alone cost me, as I did hit a lower percentage of the solo, but I finished 10,000 off my first attempt despite hitting a grand total of 1 more note overall. A couple of the parts I found most difficult to keep a combo through were the solo and outro sections that have these tap notes. And I've heard a lot from much better Guitar Hero players than myself about how these have a bit of a sketchy timing window. I'm not even sure if that's the case in this game specifically, but it's the excuse I'm going to run with for any time they trip me up. Regardless of that, I kept on my trend of increasing my total notes hit each time, by 1 again on the third run, and then up to just a -15 on the next playthrough. Annoyingly though, in the latter I missed the star power phrase at the start of the solo for the first time, and then just to rub salt in the wounds, absolutely nailed the following section, where the points would have been flooding in had star power been active. So ultimately I fell short again, but I thought if I can just repeat that percentage of notes hit but pick up all the star power phrases, I'd be done. Turns out I was wrong, as I did just that but could only increase my PB by another 500 points. And around this time, maybe a little bit of doubt was starting to set in. But of course, I couldn't give up and stuck to it, with one of my next 2 attempts improving my notes hit but not the score, and the other being the only one I quit out of because the wheels completely fell off halfway through. But thankfully, the following run would end up being my last. And there's nothing worth mentioning from the first half of the song really, other than when watching this back I've noticed that apparently I start gurning when concentrating, so that's great. And what made the difference this time around is the fact that I managed to hold the note streak a decent amount longer into the solo, not breaking around the mid 800 point like usual. What did break unfortunately was my camera, which hadn't frozen once during the entire time I'd been recording this game but chose now to troll me. Although the mixture of shock, surprise and wide-eyed fear that's locked on my face does give a very accurate representation of how I was feeling in the moment. The actual gameplay was still recording fine, so the smart thing to do would have probably been just leave it and not risk messing up the run, but I couldn't resist pausing to restart OBS and try to get it working again. Pretty stupid, but luckily it didn't cost me despite doing it twice, and not even the tap notes in the outro could trip me up this time as I held myself together, hitting everything from the end of the solo to the end of the song, and actually kind of smashing the target by over 10,000 points with a total score of 587,000. And with that, finally unlocking the Creeping Death achievement, one I'd had in the back of my mind for many years. And all it took was hitting all but 4 of the notes. I'm not sure I could ever have a run that good again, to be honest. Although I did actually play it again a few days later just for fun, hitting less notes but beating my score by another 1,000 points, by being a bit smarter with my star power activation during the solo. So really, that score that unlocked the achievement should have been even higher, and to be honest I probably could have unlocked it during one of the earlier runs, but oh well, it's done now. And there we have it. Every guitar related Guitar Hero Metallica achievement unlocked. And there's still a ton that I haven't covered, so if you'd be interested in seeing me play through the other instruments and attempt to get good at the drums or something like that, then let me know and I'll see what I can do. I still 100% recommend this game to anyone, especially if you haven't played it, you've got to give it a go. As for me, I think I'm going to try to tackle Guitar Hero Van Halen next, but those achievements look very scary. But that's all for today, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.